Madison, you won't believe this. There are unfamiliar men and women living in your supposedly vacant house. Please call the police immediately and come to the property right now. Hearing the trembling voice of my lawyer, Michael Turner, echoing in my ear, I instinctively slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched, violently kicking up gravel along the steep mountain road in North Carolina. My heart pounded fiercely in my ears, and I felt my fingers gripping the steering wheel turn white with tension. The property in question was a beautiful A-frame house standing deep in the mountains near Asheville. I had inherited it from my beloved grandmother, Eleanor. For a final inspection before putting it up for sale, I had sent my trusted lawyer, Michael, ahead of me. But what came back was a report so far removed from reality that it was almost absurd. Illegal occupation. Strangers are living there? What do you mean, Michael? The house should have been locked. The locks have been replaced with a new deadbolt. When I tried to open the door with the spare key, an unfamiliar man came out and yelled at me, saying, "Don't come in here without permission. This is trespassing." They were drinking wine on the living room sofa, watching television, and completely treating the place as their own home. This is not a normal situation at all. Fear and confusion were unmistakably present in Michael's voice. With trembling hands, I ended the call and immediately dialed 911. "This is an emergency. There are suspicious individuals illegally occupying my property on the outskirts of Asheville. Please dispatch officers immediately. I am heading to the scene right now. Time is critical." While explaining the situation to the operator, I pressed the accelerator all the way to the floor. The moment I arrived and opened the door, an unbelievable scene jumped into view. There stood my lawyer, Michael, clutching documents with a confused expression, two police officers crossing their arms and blocking the way with an intimidating presence, and unbelievably, my younger sister Jasmine and her husband Ryan standing there as if they were the rightful owners of the house. The instant Jasmine saw my face, instead of apologizing, she deliberately let out an exaggerated sigh. "Seriously, calling the police over something like this is way too much, don't you think? We were finally relaxing together as a couple, and you completely ruined the mood. Can't you respect your own sister's privacy?" Jasmine spoke irritably as she casually swirled the crystal glass in her hand. It was an antique piece, one of only a few sets in the world that my grandfather had given to my grandmother. "You're the one being ridiculous, Jasmine. What on earth are you thinking? This is my property. Changing the locks and moving in without permission is blatant illegal occupation." My shout was cut off by a snort of laughter from Ryan, who was standing beside her. "Illegal occupation? Don't say things that sound so bad. We're just making effective use of family assets as relatives. You've got a perfectly nice house, right? You own 5 properties, and this one was sitting empty. If that's the case, it's only natural for you to let your sister and her husband, who can't afford rent, stay here for free. Hoarding everything for yourself isn't right, Madison." "Lending it to you? I never said anything like that. What happened to your rental apartment?" "Oh, that place? We canceled the lease last month. This place is free and the air is great. We're even getting ready to move our registered address here. Got a problem with that?" I felt dizzy hearing the words Jasmine threw out so casually. They had selfishly cut off their own escape route and barged into my property without permission, fully intending to settle here permanently. One of the police officers carefully scanned the interior with sharp eyes and then addressed me. "Ma'am, you did not give them permission to live here, is that correct?" "Of course not. And please look at this living room." Beyond the wide-open front door, a grotesque scene spread out before us. The once elegant living room was lined with crude steel racks, and dozens of laptops along with spiderweb-like communication cables filled the entire space. Thick soundproofing sheets were roughly taped over the windows with duct tape, making the place look exactly like a criminal operation base. "Jasmine, what on earth is all this equipment?" "It's just work. People who can't make money through lucky investments like you have to work desperately to survive." "That's enough. Pack up that filthy junk right now and get out." My furious shout echoed through the living room, but Jasmine only snorted and leaned back deeply into the sofa. Her attitude showed complete contempt for the law and for justice itself. "No way. This is our office. Or should I sue you for trespassing instead?" We have the right to live here. We've already moved all our belongings in, and the fact that we've been living here since yesterday can't be erased. If you cross this line even one step, I'll call a lawyer for human rights violations. However, Jasmine was making a fatal misunderstanding. This was North Carolina. When the rightful owner is present, the lawyer holds documents proving ownership, and there is clear evidence that the property is being unlawfully used as a business base and damaged. The police response is merciless. This is your final warning, the veteran officer declared in a low but inescapable voice. The property owner is demanding you to leave immediately. Since you cannot present a legitimate lease agreement, this constitutes first-degree criminal trespassing. Stand up right now. Don't screw with me. Ryan flew into a rage and shoved the officer who stepped forward hard in the chest with both hands. In that instant, the air in the room froze completely. You are under arrest for obstruction of official duties and assaulting a police officer. Do not resist. The officer subdued Ryan in an instant and slammed him to the floor. The cold, metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the quiet mountain valley. Let me go. This is an illegal arrest. Police brutality. Jasmine, help me. Ryan, what do you think you're doing, you tax-sucking thugs? Get out of our house. Enraged, Jasmine lunged at the officer's arm like a madwoman and dug in her nails. Oh, looks like the wife, too. Obstruction of official duties. Calm down and cooperate. Jasmine was also easily subdued and handcuffed without much resistance. Madison, this is all your fault. Turning your own family over to the police? I'll curse you for the rest of my life. Go to hell. The ones going to hell are you, for turning someone else's home into a criminal base. Take them away immediately. Never let them set foot on this property again. When I said this coldly, the two of them were shoved into a patrol car, hurling insults and abuse the entire time. A silence like the aftermath of a storm settled over the house. The sound of the patrol car sirens faded into the distance, and the vacation home fell quiet once more. Together with my lawyer, Michael, I climbed the stairs step by step and resumed checking the condition of the property. The living room on the first floor was in a state so terrible I wanted to look away. Soundproofing sheets had been slapped onto the walls, and holes had been drilled into the floor without permission to run wiring. This is terrible. The second floor is probably the same. This will seriously affect the appraisal value. As I listened to Michael's words, I suddenly remembered the strange thing my late grandmother Eleanor had said to me before she died. Just before her death, she had gripped my hand tightly in her hospital bed and whispered this. Madison, if a storm comes and you lose sight of everything around you, look for that secret place where we used to play long ago. There's a light hidden there to protect you. It's a place Jasmine will never find. At the time, I had thought it was just delirium from illness, but now, in the midst of this abnormal situation, her words flashed vividly through my mind, sending a jolt down my spine. Michael, let's go to the attic. I have a feeling something is hidden there. The attic? Even though the first floor was packed with electronic equipment, there wasn't a single wire up there. It was the dustiest place, and it didn't look like your sister ever went near it. That's exactly why. We passed through the second-floor bedroom and headed further up to a small ladder-like staircase. In stark contrast to the living room downstairs, layers of thick dust had piled up there. Coughing, I pushed open the heavy door and turned on my flashlight. An old blanket, a broken wooden rocking horse, and in the corner of the room, a section of drywall that was unnaturally newer and a different color. I hooked my fingers into the gap in that wall and put my weight into it. The plywood peeled away with a cracking sound, and hidden behind insulation was a heavy, matte black digital safe. This is it. Grandma really did hide something here. Impressive find, but we don't know the password. Leave it to me. I placed my fingers on the cold keypad of the safe. The password is a number only Grandma and I know. No matter how much Jasmine thinks about it, she'll never figure it out. It was the numerical conversion of my grandmother's maiden name, our secret code. 0428. I entered the numbers. A solid electronic click echoed, and the lock disengaged. Slowly lifting the lid, I found a massive stack of neatly filed documents sleeping inside. I took the top file and shone my light on it, and in that instant, my throat froze with fear. These are client lists for senior investment funds. And look at these bank transaction records. Michael took the documents, adjusted his glasses, and stared at them intently. Madison, this is serious. Every fraudulent account listed here and every suspicious transfer destination is registered under your name with your social security number, former address, and even a meticulously forged version of your signature. I felt all the blood drain from my face. The files contained a complete record of the organized fraud Jasmine and Ryan had carried out, accompanied by notes that read like the screams of their victims. A total of $800,000 stolen from elderly people. All of it had been routed through accounts opened in my name, cleverly disguised to make it look as though I were the mastermind. Then we found the decisive piece of evidence, a handwritten note from Jasmine. Madison has plenty of assets, so a little illegal money transfer will blend right in. Even if the tax authorities come, we can insist that she is the ringleader operating out of this house. If we testify that we were just caretakers, we'll be set for life. Let the rich fulfill their obligations. I felt nauseous. My own sister wasn't trying to protect me. She was planning to use me as a shield for her crimes and send me to prison. And at the very bottom of the stack of documents, there was my grandmother's real will. To my beloved Madison, I realized that Jasmine and the others had stolen my client lists and were planning something terrible using your name. I gathered the evidence in this safe, but my time is nearly over. I will leave not a single cent to Jasmine. I entrust all my assets to you. Please reveal the truth. Never forgive the monsters who wear the skin of family. Until the very moment of her death, my grandmother had been gathering evidence in this dusty attic to protect me. Thank you, Grandma. Michael, before we contact the federal investigators, there's one thing I want you to help me with. We're going to plan how to completely erase them from society. The next morning, I was sitting across from an old friend, Daniel Morales, a special investigator with the IRS, at a quiet cafe in downtown Asheville. He was the government's most relentless bloodhound, a man who had exposed countless complex financial crimes. This is far more vicious than I imagined, Madison. Exploitation of the elderly, organized wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft against you. The evidence is airtight. The results of the preliminary investigation Daniel presented only fueled my anger further. They hid the money stolen from the victims in accounts under your name, then went on a spending spree using cards issued in your name. A luxury cruise to the Bahamas, Hermes bags, the latest Tesla. All of it is recorded as purchases made by Madison Burke. Your credit score has completely collapsed, and you're now flagged as a suspect in financial crimes. If this continues, all of your assets could be frozen. The blood drained from my face. My own sister had turned me into a greedy con artist on paper, while she and her husband enjoyed a royal lifestyle funded by the stolen savings of their victims. While grandmothers were crying over the loss of their grandchildren's college funds, they were living it up, using my name to indulge in life. Daniel, tell me how to finish them completely. I want them to taste a level of despair so deep that they can't make a single excuse. Daniel flashed a fearless grin and placed a compact, high-performance voice recorder on the table. As long as one party consents, recording is legal. Let's lure them back to that house one more time. We'll lie and say we found a second hidden trust fund your grandmother left behind. If you tell them that signatures are required to receive it, those two shallow fools will bite for sure. I nodded deeply at Daniel's plan. I would guide the confession carefully, adapting to the situation on the ground. Understood. Let's set the perfect stage. One that makes them so eager to brag about their own cleverness that they won't be able to stop talking. This was not a negotiation. It was an execution ritual designed to make them issue their own one-way tickets to federal prison, straight from their own mouths. With trembling fingers, I sent a message to Jasmine, who had just been released on bail. I'm sorry I got emotional yesterday. After checking with my lawyer, we found another hidden account Grandma left behind. It's a significant amount. You have a right to receive part of it too, so let's talk again tomorrow at the house. I've invited Mom as well. The next afternoon, the air around the Asheville vacation home was cold and eerily still. I spread out the convincing fake trust documents that Daniel and Michael had prepared on the living room table and quietly waited for the moment to arrive. Soon, the crude roar of an engine crunching gravel echoed outside, and a rental car pulled up. Jasmine and Ryan stepped out, completely different from when they had been arrested just days earlier, wearing designer sunglasses and walking into the house with the swagger of victors. Madison, it looks like you finally understand. Turning your own family over to the police? You were clearly out of your mind. But a hidden account Grandma left behind? That changes everything. If you'd said that from the start, Ryan wouldn't have gotten so angry. Jasmine declared that triumphantly the moment she entered the living room. Behind her, our mother followed, her expression strangely buoyant. Sit down. We'll talk after that. Suppressing my emotions, I pointed to the fake documents. To receive this fund, you have to clear an IRS investigation. Because you used my name without permission, there are now suspicions of money laundering. If things stay like this, not only this inheritance, but all of my assets could be seized. Jasmine's face turned deathly pale in an instant. Seized? The money we're finally about to get? I won't allow that. Exactly. That's why I'll file a false amended return, claiming it was a business I had been managing under the table. That way, the money can be processed as legitimate income. To avoid seizure, I need every detail. When the money was moved, from whom, how, and how much. I need everything so the paperwork is perfect. Our mother leaned forward as well, drawn in by the promise of an inheritance. That's right, Jasmine. Madison is saying she'll take the fall, so tell her everything. This is the surest way for all of us to end up happy. By then, Jasmine had completely forgotten how to doubt. Blinded by the enormous inheritance dangling right in front of her like a carrot, she had lost all caution. Fine, I'll be honest. We actually started opening accounts in your name 2 years ago. Jasmine began speaking enthusiastically. The hidden recording device had begun capturing every word of her downfall without fail. Old people are shockingly defenseless once they trust someone. Jasmine spoke in the tone of a successful entrepreneur. Inside my pocket, the voice recorder continued to pick up every ugly word she uttered without missing a single one. The method was simple. From Grandma's old client list, we filtered out wealthy people who lived alone and whose judgment had dulled. Then we contacted them under a very convincing name, Madison Burke Real Estate Investment Advisory. Your name is well known in the industry, and more importantly, it's clean, so no one ever questioned it. Ryan proudly added from the side. The drop accounts we opened using your social security number turned out to be the perfect laundering machine. The money wired in by the victims went through there first, then was sent off to overseas Bitcoin accounts. Even if the police caught a cent, the account holder was you. It would only look like a rich sister pinning the crime on her poor sister. A perfect plan, right? The two of them burst out laughing. But collecting as much as $800,000 must have been hard, right? When I prompted her, Jasmine snorted smugly. Hard? Not at all. Mrs. Collins said it was her grandchild's college fund, but when we proposed a guaranteed investment, she cried with joy and signed immediately. Those stupid old people had no idea their money was turning into our Bahamas trips, the latest Tesla, and Hermes bags. In the end, money shouldn't be used by the people who have it, but by the people who are smart. Ryan leaned forward as well, accelerating the confession. Using your house as our office saved us rent, and using your credit let us handle big transactions. Your name was the perfect camouflage. About this trust fund, too, if you sign as the mastermind, I think we can kick back about 10% to you. A family discount. 10%? You framed me and made $800,000 and I only get 10%? Don't be greedy. You already have more than enough, right? This is wealth redistribution. Their confession could not have been more perfect. Motive, methods, victim details, and a clear admission that they had deliberately framed me. I slowly stood up, removed my sunglasses, and fixed the two of them with a cold stare. Thank you. I wanted to hear those words directly from your own mouths. Now it's all over. Huh? What's with that face? Hurry up and sign. I took out my phone and said briefly, You heard everything. Come in. The moment my short signal echoed through the living room, the front door of the vacation house was kicked in with a thunderous crash. FBI, nobody move. Hands up. Amid furious shouts, several men and women in tactical vests stormed inside. On their backs were large letters reading FBI and IRSCI. Leading them was Daniel Morales, the very man who had been sitting across from me at the cafe just moments earlier. He thrust forward his badge and fixed a cold stare on the frozen Jasmine and Ryan. What is this? Madison, what does this mean? Jasmine screamed as she nearly fell out of her chair. Ryan dropped the whiskey glass he was holding, and the amber liquid spread across the carpet. I told you not to move. Every word of your confession has been recorded in real time under federal investigation. Daniel spoke calmly and pointed to the small receiver placed on the table. What had been hidden against my chest was not just a recorder, but a live transmitter sending audio directly to the patrol cars where the agents were waiting. No way, you were recording us? That's dirty. Trapping your own family like this, how low can you go? Jasmine's face flushed bright red as she lunged at me, but a female agent instantly twisted her arm behind her back and slammed her face onto the table. Jasmine Burke and Ryan Burke, you are under arrest for violations of the Elder Abuse Prevention Act, wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft. You have the right to remain silent, but your confessions just made will be entered as evidence in court. In that moment, the living room turned into a hellish scene of chaos and screaming. Wait, I had nothing to do with this. Chase planned everything. Don't lie, Jasmine. You're the one who brought the client list. Just moments ago, they had been posing as invincible business partners, but the instant the handcuffs clicked shut, they began desperately hurling blame at each other. The sight was pitiful and almost laughable. Our mother had collapsed into a corner of the room, sitting as if her legs had given out. Agent Daniel, please wait. This is a family matter. There's been some kind of mistake. Madison, stop this. You'll stain the Burke family name. I returned my mother's trembling plea with a cold stare. Mom, it's too late. They bragged with their own mouths about stealing grandchildren's college funds from elderly people and trying to pin the crime on me. The reputation you wanted to protect was dragged into the mud by their own hands. Screaming and sobbing, Jasmine was dragged toward the front door. I watched silently as the flashing lights of the patrol cars swallowed them whole. Several months after the arrest, the trial was held at the federal courthouse in Asheville. Jasmine and Ryan, sitting in the defendant's seats, bore not a trace of their former arrogance. Their skin was roughened by detention, and they were dressed in cheap, ill-fitting courtroom suits. Until the very end, they clung to the pathetic claim that it was merely borrowing within the family. But the decisive confession recording submitted by the federal prosecutor shattered everything. The judge delivered the verdict in a cold, merciless voice. Defendant Jasmine Burke, you are found to be the principal offender in violations of the Elder Abuse Prevention Act, wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft, crimes of an extremely malicious nature. Accordingly, you are hereby sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. As for the accomplice, Ryan Burke, you are sentenced to 12 months of probation. In addition, full restitution to the victims is hereby ordered. 5 years? This is a lie. We only moved $800,000. There's no way I should go to prison. Jasmine screamed in the courtroom, but reality showed no mercy. Furthermore, their assets were liquidated by the United States Marshals Service. Every sandcastle they had built with stolen money was exposed to the light of day and collapsed. The latest Tesla bought with loans taken out in my name, the Hermes bags that had filled their closet, and Rolex watches worth thousands of dollars were seized one after another and sent to auction. Madison, please, don't sell that watch. Do you know how hard I worked to get it? In the detention center visiting room, Jasmine clung to me as she begged, and I answered her coldly. You didn't work for it. You just stole the wealth that women like Sophia Collins protected their entire lives. Everything is going back where it belongs. Don't cling to it for even a millimeter. Your so-called success was a fake, built on other people's misery. The funds generated from the seized assets were distributed under federal supervision to 6 victims. Out of the total damages of $800,000, approximately 30% was returned to them. Sometime later, I visited the home of one of the victims, Mrs. Sophia Collins. Madison, thank you so much. My grandson's college fund came back. I had already given up, but now I can let him chase his dreams again. As I felt the warmth of her hands gripping mine through her tears, I knew it with certainty. Uncovering the truth in that house that day was the most valuable action I had ever taken in my life. Madison, wait! Don't go! The one who chased after me as I stepped out through the heavy courthouse doors was my mother. Her face was crumpled with tears, and there was no trace left of the dignified figure she had been just months before. But what spilled from her mouth was not an apology to me, but a shockingly selfish accusation. If you had changed your testimony and agreed to a settlement, Jasmine's life could have been saved. Don't you have any mercy at all? Do you really think you can be happy after throwing your own family into hell? I stopped walking and slowly turned around. Mom, let me ask you just one thing. Did you truly not doubt for even a single second, until Jasmine was arrested, that she had stolen my identity and scammed elderly people? When you saw that flashy lifestyle, didn't you think anything was strange? At my question, my mother twisted her face and screamed as if spitting the words out. Of course I didn't doubt it. I just assumed that you, being successful, were helping your sister out. I thought that was family supporting family. And yet, without even talking to me, you suddenly sold Jasmine out to complete strangers like the FBI and the police. If you had consulted me, we could have settled this quietly within the family. Instead, you dragged it out into the open and trampled our family's pride with your own hands. The moment I heard those words, something inside me collapsed with a sound, and then vanished completely. To my mother, my sister and I had never really mattered. The only thing she could not forgive was losing the chance to cover up the family's shame and having it exposed to the world. Pride? What pride is there in a family that steals money from the elderly and frames their own daughter? Mom, the family you're talking about tried to destroy me. The only people who protected me were my friends. Daniel, who isn't even related by blood, and Michael, my colleague. After knowing the truth, you still blame me for not hiding a crime. You no longer have the right to call yourself my mother. I took a copy of my grandmother's will, the one I had found in the attic, from my bag and shoved it against my mother's chest. Grandma saw everything coming. That's why she entrusted me with the evidence to cut you all off. Mom, this is goodbye for you too. Stay buried in that dark past along with your so-called family dignity. Ignoring my mother's screams behind me, I walked toward the parking lot without looking back even once. That very day, I blocked all contact information for my mother, Jasmine, and Ryan. Through my lawyer, I also sent a legal notice prohibiting any future contact whatsoever. After the storm-like days had passed, silence returned once more to the mountains of Asheville. The A-frame house I had inherited from my grandmother was sold promptly once evidence preservation for the case was lifted. Ironically, the attic, the one Jasmine and the others had called filthy and never went near, remained the only part of the house that was still untouched and beautiful. A young couple who came to view the property instantly fell in love with the hidden room in the attic, calling it perfect for a secret study, and the deal closed at the full asking price. The proceeds from the sale were deposited into my account. They were funds for my future, money my grandmother had protected with her life. Using that money, I bought a small house in a quiet place far from the bustle of Charlotte, a new base for my life. There was no family left who would sacrifice me for their own sake. Several years after the incident, I heard rumors about how they were doing. Jasmine is currently inside the gray walls of a federal prison. The woman who once clutched her mess bags and drank fine wine is nowhere to be found anymore. Now she spends her days in a sterile orange jumpsuit, eating meals from a cold plastic tray. Inside prison, a former elite con artist title means absolutely nothing, and she now spends her days scrubbing floors while trembling in fear of inmates far stronger than she is. Her husband Ryan's fate is even more miserable. Placed on probation, his criminal record has prevented him from finding any decent work, and he now drifts from one day labor construction site to another at the very bottom of society. He never had any real loyalty to Jasmine to begin with, and the moment her incarceration was decided, he coldly turned on her and filed for divorce. But now penniless, he can barely scrape together enough money to pay the rent on a rundown apartment. And then there is my mother. The family reputation she valued above all else was dragged through the mud, and the rumors spread quickly. One by one, her friends drifted away, and now she lives completely alone, whittling down the small amount of savings that escaped seizure, spending her days in a dark room with the windows shut tight, cursing my name, or so I've heard. As for me, the restoration of my credit history has been progressing smoothly. My name as a real estate investor has once again established itself as that of a trustworthy business partner. I quietly speak in my heart to the smiling photograph of my grandmother displayed above the fireplace in my new home. Grandma, thank you. What you wanted to protect, I've truly inherited it now.